Let's raise the big questions then tonight at the top. Is neutrality over the Russian-Ukraine war really working to India's advantage? In a new world order, can India seize this moment? Should India be asserting more vigorously or tread more cautiously? Is containing China still the principal challenge? Those are some of the questions, and I'm going to be joined by a special guest, Shyam Saran, former National Security Advisor and Foreign Secretary, and rated and seen as one of the most credible foreign policy voices in the country. Join me. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Saran. I want to turn at this moment, when the Prime Minister is on this whirlwind Europe tour, to something, Mr. Saran, you've just written in an article where you said India must make the most of the diplomatic attention it's getting at the moment. Do you want to elaborate, Mr. Saran, on that? Why do you believe that the Russia-Ukraine war in a way presents India with an opportunity to make its presence felt not just in Europe but across the world?
I think there are several reasons for this. As you know, there is a tremendous churn taking place in the geopolitical landscape thanks to the war in Ukraine, which is still ongoing. I think it has shaken a lot of assumptions with regard to, the trend lines in the world in terms of politics, in terms of economics, in terms even of technology. So we are in the midst of very, very, monumental change that is taking place. And I think as far as the United States and the Western countries are concerned, and in that I include also our world partners like, for example, Japan and Australia, that there is a need to see how we can shape what is going to be the emerging architecture of the global environment in ways in which our interests can be safeguarded. And I believe that at this particular point of time, one of the most important objectives of India's foreign policy is really to bring about the transformation of India itself in terms of its economy, in terms of its technological upgradation. And India is one of the most important economies, is still one of the emerging economies that is growing the fastest, even though there has been a kind of a slowdown. So the opportunities that India offers as a large growing economy is one factor. The second factor is that if we are looking at a whole series of global challenges, whether it is climate change, whether it is a pandemic, many other issues as well, India's role, India's participation is indispensable in terms of the solution of those issues. So it really makes sense, both for India as well as for the West, to really allow a stronger partnership to develop between them. That is why I feel that it is a sweet spot. There is a mutual need in a sense on both sides. Don't forget that when you had the joint statement, very important joint statement issued by China and Russia in February at the time of the Olympics, China and Russia were really contemplating a very different international order, an international order which would be dominated by these two countries. Now, whatever issues we may have with the Western-dominated, global system, we certainly do not have much interest in seeing an alternative international order which is dominated certainly by China as the senior partner. So I think that there are important reasons why we should be looking at this visit by the Prime Minister to Europe as a great opportunity for us to really forge that kind of strong partnership.
As you've seen, Mr. Saran, there are European countries at the moment that want India to take a stronger, more well-defined position, if I may use the word, on the war in Ukraine. You've got Denmark, which has come out very strongly today and said India must take a position which is more critical of Russia, name Russia as the aggressor, Ukraine as a victim, and shedding what is being described, as I said, by some as India's neutral position. The Prime Minister in Germany is saying there will be no winners in this war, trying to walk this tightrope. Do you believe India has to shed its so-called neutrality at the moment in any way and be seen to be aggressively siding with one side or the other while the Prime Minister is in Europe?
Well, first of all, I don't think it is correct to say that we are aggressively siding with one party. I think it is clear that India does not support Russian aggression against Ukraine. That I think is quite clear. I think it would be a mistake to look at India's relations with the West narrowly through the prism of India's relations with Russia. Yes, certainly I agree with you that the West would like India to take a more vocal stand on Russian aggression against Ukraine. But I think far more important, as I said, that both India and the West have this greater challenge of coping with the fallout from the Ukraine war. The fallout in terms of what is going to be the shape of the new international environment. I think that is far more important, and I think the West is quite, mindful of the fact that, if you look at India-Russia relations in a certain longer-term perspective, these relations have become progressively more marginal. Whether you are looking at the trade aspect, if there is an energy partnership that India sought, Russia, in fact, was far more inclined to have that energy partnership with China rather than with India. And even as far as the defense hardware relationship is concerned, over the last 20 years or so, there has been a progressive diversification of India's military hardware sources of supply. Right. Yes, there are certain legacy issues because we have been, in fact, a country which has been, very much, dependent upon technology as well as on defense hardware from Russia of the kinds that they have not been possible to obtain from the Western countries. Now, here there is an opportunity to also encourage the United States, encourage the West to be much more open in terms of, meeting the kind of requirements that India's, defense has and meeting the challenge that we face, particularly from China. So I do not think that the West is so hung up on the rhetorical aspect, of India-Russia relations. I think they are quite clear after the engagement that they have over the last several weeks that while India may be reticent in terms of, openly criticizing Russia, it is certainly not, in fact, a country which is actively supporting what Russia is doing in Ukraine. That much, I think, is quite clear.
Mr. Saran, you've already mentioned China more than once. You seem to mention the fact that we could see a newly emerging international order where China would like to play an increasingly assertive role. And as you wrote the other day in a column, you believe China remains our principal threat. How do we therefore use Europe, perhaps, or the West to combat China in a sense? Do we become part of a new multipolar world, already part of the Quad? Is that the way forward as the Prime Minister visits Germany, travels to France? Can we be seen to be part of a new arrangement, alliance that can check an expansionist China and can include some of the European countries as well?
So, Rajdeep, I have often said that there are two kind of dimensions to our meeting the challenge from China. One is, internal balancing or domestic balancing, as we say. Domestic balancing is that there is no alternative but to, in fact, accelerate the transformation of our own capabilities. Whether it is economic capabilities, technological capabilities, our military capabilities, the more strong India is in terms of these capabilities, the better it can deal with the challenge of China. That is one aspect. The second aspect is, while that transformation is taking place, what are the ways in which we can try and put a certain degree of restraint on Chinese predilection to aggressive behavior? And in that respect, certainly having strong relationship with the United States of America, strong relationship with Western Europe, strong relationship with our partners in Japan and Australia, this is part and parcel of that response. So both are important. And as I pointed out in my article, that these relationships with the United States, with Western Europe, with Japan are also very important precisely for that domestic balancing. Because, first and foremost, we want a transformation, a development of the of India itself. So I think whichever way we look at it, it is very important for us to really advance these partnerships with these countries. And don't forget that even though Europe had a certain kind of a balancing relationship with China, because China was such an important economic partner and continues to be a very important economic partner. But thanks to what happened in February with the joint statement, thanks to China's support to Russia despite the Ukraine war, there are now questions being asked about whether or not it is really prudent on the part of Europe to have this strong kind of economic exposure to China, which may work against them in the long run. So I think there is a certain kind of a convergence of interests among the major players today, whether in Japan or Western Europe or US, in terms of trying to see how we can restrain China from a very, very aggressive kind of behavior, particularly in the Indo-Pacific.
So how do we actually therefore restrain China, an expansionist China, as the PM is again in Western Europe? How does India actually assert its own position? What is our USP at the moment that could help us be part of some kind of a global arrangement that contains China? The reason as I ask you this also is because Foreign Minister Jaishankar at times is seen to be muscle flexing, virtually sending out tough messages to the West that, look, we are acting in our national interest on the Russia-Ukraine war. We don't need to be lectured. Do you believe that is the approach to take, that India must be much more aggressive and assertive to seize this diplomatic opportunity, or should we tread a little bit more warily?
Well, every foreign minister has his own style of dealing with foreign relations. So I will leave it to Jaishankar to explain why he has taken a certain position. As I have stated a number of times, our interests on several issues are not the same as that of, say, the United States of America. They are not the same with Western Europe. They may even not be same with our partners in East Asia, for example, Japan. There will be issues on which our positions are different because we are coming from very different starting points. So I think Jaishankar has pointed out, for example, that, if you take, for example, the Afghan situation, in a sense, India has been also left to, pick up the pieces of the kind of chaotic withdrawal which took place by the United States. Certainly, India's interests may not have been uppermost in the mind of the United States when it decided to take that step. So there will be issues on which we will have to take our own independent stand. But that does not mean that we should not be able to work together, say with the United States or Western Europe or Japan, where our interests are actually aligned. Now, with regard to China itself, China, whether we like it or not, is and will continue to be a major part. We may have to work out some kind of a relationship with China, which allows both countries, in a sense, not to become, sort of implacably hostile to one another. But when we are threatened by China, we have every right to try and protect ourselves, safeguard our interests. So if there are partnerships which help us to do that, why should we not seek those partnerships? So whatever may be the rhetoric which we may have adopted for whatever reason, I would say that substantive. I certainly believe that there is a strong outcome in favor of, particularly, say, utilizing the current visit of the Prime Minister to force those kind of partnerships, not only in terms of dealing with the Chinese challenge, but also, as I mentioned very importantly, that if India wants to transform itself, transform its economy, upgrade its technology, who are its best partners? Those best partners still continue to be the United States, still continue to be Western Europe and Japan, because these are still the repository of the most sophisticated technologies in the world. They are still the major sources of capital in the world. So if India wants to take advantage of our relationship with these countries to transform India, then I think it makes a great sense to utilize every opportunity to strengthen those relationships. And as far as the relationship with China is concerned, I don't think we should see ourselves as being part of a containment ring around China. But certainly, I think the message should also go to China that India is not isolated, that India has strong partnerships with important countries in the world. And it has a certain importance of its own. That is why it is being quoted by other major powers. So that also is a message to China. So I think this is the reason why I felt that actually this is a moment of opportunity which we should adopt, that we should actually take advantage of.
A moment of opportunity for India to seize. Shyam Saran, to give us an overview there as the Prime Minister is on his European outreach. Appreciate you joining us here on the news today. Thank you very much.